It is universally accepted that a country's greatest resource is its people. Countries spend billions of dollars every year to raise the quantity and quality of human capital in order to improve development efforts and give their citizens and their countries a competitive edge in their economies. There is no doubt that a country with highly qualified people stands a better chance of attracting better foreign investors of high value, eradicating poverty, and increasing the life expectancy of its citizens. Botswana has not been left behind in developing its human capital. A number of private companies continue to spend millions of pula training their employees. On a large scale, the government of Botswana has taken the lead in developing the country's human capital through the provision of friendly policies or directly paying for training of Batswana. Talking to First Issues recently, Grace Muzila, the Permanent Secretary at the Ministry of Education and Skills Development, mentioned that government spends over 25% of its annual allocated budget on education alone.
The government of Botswana is committed to supporting the education system in the country. Since independence, we talk about more than 25% allocated to the education sector. You can see that commitment. In fact, as recent as last year, we talk about 28% of the recurrent budget allocated to Ministry of Education and Skills Development. That's a lot of money. Last year, we were allocated 8.7 billion, and out of that, we are talking around 2.4 billion per annum spent on our learners at tertiary level. Cumulatively from 0304 to date, we are talking 11 billion plus spent on our learners at tertiary only. 11 billion plus. That's a lot of money.
The excellent efforts made by government and the private sector into making Botswana more competitive through a trained and educated labor force are facing a big challenge: the loss of productive lives through road accidents. From the 2010 statistics, majority of those who lose their lives or ability to work are in the productive age bracket of 25 to 44 years. At 65% for drivers, 71% of passengers were aged between 20 and 44. These age brackets represent the majority of the human capital of the economy, and when their lives are lost and they're no longer able to contribute towards the economy, the impact can be costly. The implications are obvious. More money will have to be spent on training more to replace the lost labor force in order for Botswana to remain competitive, rather than spending money on other equally important sectors of the country's challenges. Productivity levels are affected because the country continues to lose experienced and highly trained human resources. Tonight on First Issues, we speak to Mr. Cross Khosidile, CEO of the MV Fund, to discuss why the people of this country continue to self-sabotage their efforts towards economic development by their careless and reckless attitude towards road safety. I'm Shadi Lindsay, and welcome to First Issues. The first question we asked our guest is, how does Botswana compare to other neighboring countries when it comes to road accidents?
If you compare the level of accidents relative to our population, we are faring very badly. We are only second to South Africa.
Why do you think this is so?
Well, I think if you look at the vehicle population, our vehicle population is relatively high compared to some of the countries in the region, and therefore the chances of accidents occurring therefore increase.
We've spoken regionally. What about internationally? How does Botswana fare in terms of road accidents?
Similarly, internationally, our rating is not positive.
You mentioned that part of the reason why we have such a high accident rate in Botswana is because of the high number of vehicles on the road. Why do you think Botswana spends so much money on buying vehicles?
I believe we have a very high vehicle population in the country, primarily because people can afford them. Like I said earlier, in our arrangement, you'll find that owning a vehicle is a lifestyle issue. It is also taken as a sign of affluence. In addition to that, because of the general economic activity, people tend to have a need for vehicles.
And what is the cost of, in monetary terms, or what does it cost the economy of Botswana every year?
I think Botswana being a middle-income country, the assumption is that the cost will be in the region of 3% of the GDP. But from our side as an accident fund, we pay an average of 100 million per annum for personal injury claims.
Amongst the hardest hit age bracket actually, what is the trend among these drivers?
The hardest hard hit group basically is the age group 20 to 34, which accounts for 60% of the total accidents. If you include the age group 35 to 39, the percentage increases to 70%. I think there are a number of reasons. Their lifestyle, I think, is central. And again, if you look at the times, which are very common for accidents, it will be the time between 2 p.m. and 10 p.m., particularly on the days, Thursdays to Sundays, where there is a high level of mobility, which is also accompanied more or less, I think, by leisure.
Part of the reasons, the main reason actually, there are a lot of accidents on the road is because of careless driving. Why do you think so many Botswana drivers are careless on the road?
I think driving basically is a lifestyle issue. You may find that one of the reasons why we are relatively careless is because to us driving is an exciting experience, and we normally grow up showing off through our driving skills. At the same time, there are indications, I believe, that the way we are groomed in terms of driving needs to be improved.
In what ways can it be improved?
As a fund, we have come up with a program that we call Occupational Road Risk Program, where we target drivers for large organizations as well as driving schools, so that the way we are orientated in terms of driving is improved from an early stage.
Mr. Khosidile, you mentioned that there are certain initiatives that the MVA fund has undertaken, especially during this festive period. Can you elaborate on those?
We have programs that we believe are quite sustainable. Just to give example, recently we initiated the Mobile Children Traffic School, which we use to drive around the country educating children on road safety. We also have initiatives pertaining to youth clubs, where we are specifically targeting the youth in terms of road safety education. We go to schools, we form these clubs, and we partner with the Ministry of Education in order to ensure that they are sustainable. We have other initiatives that we do in conjunction with the stakeholders, particularly where our intention is to empower our stakeholders, considering that road safety is also a value chain issue. You need all the components to be effective. We have worked with the police. You may be aware that some of their boost buses were acquired through our assistance, primarily to improve on the enforcement side. We have worked with DRTS to the extent that we enabled them with IT systems. We donated quite handsomely in order to automate permit issuance as well as issuance of driver's license in order to mitigate fraudulent documents and also to speed up the licensing process. We work with the communities through what we call the Community Road Safety Grant Scheme, where we target community groups that have ideas that are quite relevant to their road safety environment, and we sponsor those through grants. Currently, we have about 17 initiatives which are quite active, and we are seeing some positive results.
In your view, what is the best practice in terms of changing the attitudes towards driving in Botswana?
I think the best practice really will be to undertake initiatives that are evidence-led. For instance, if we are to target drunken driving, we must rely on empirical evidence to prove that indeed most of the accidents are drinking related, and therefore come up with initiatives that targets such behavior. And in that respect, for instance, as a fund, we are currently working with the Center for Disease Control to undertake a research on road safety awareness. We believe it will provide baseline information that can help us to initiate evidence-based initiatives.
Deaths and injuries associated with road accidents can be prevented, since factors which contribute to them can be controlled. Statistics in fact show that 85% of road accidents are a direct result of the wrong attitude towards driving. What makes one a dangerous driver? Not watching the road, using your mobile while driving, speeding and unsafe overtaking, drunk driving or driving under any kind of chemical influence, not maintaining your car properly, and driving on the clutch. In conclusion, please note that red is not the new green, and a stop sign means just that, stop. And the speed limit is there for a reason. By noting this, you'll be helping to protect Botswana's most valuable asset, its human capital. In our next segment, my co-host Nameto Sibina continues our series on financial planning with Edna Dambe of Money Matters Financial Services Consultants. To start off with, Nameto asks Edna, how else can we secure a financially astute nation apart from just grooming our children?
You need to make people responsible for the money that comes to them. Are you with me? Let me move away from the family, right? I've spoken about the child. And let me talk a bit about the employee. I get a job and I've got a finite salary coming in every month. And then the employer goes on to offer me a company loan. They go on to sit down with the bank and say, set up this type of loan for these people. Do you understand? Now, you are basically saying to me, don't live within your means, Edna. You're saying what I earn, I shouldn't bother trying to live within it because you are there for me to access additional funding for unplanned activities. So it has a lot to do with, we've looked at the family, look at the employee, and as a nation, we should communicate financial issues, I think, from a government point. Do you understand? From a government level. You know, I don't want to pass the buck to government and say government should fund debt clinics and so forth. But some campaigns are affordable. The Consumer Affairs Department, I'm sorry to be so direct, could actually embark on affordable campaigns where every time you get into a public space, you see a big poster asking you one or two questions. Are you spending right? Are you saving right? Are you concerned about your personal risk management? So there's a little bit that every single one of us can do. And mark my word, when I spoke about the child's allowance, most people think you give a child an allowance because you can. But you basically measure it according to your affordability. It is a must, not a can.
Why does Edna consider childhood financial education a must and not an option?
It is a must because that is the only way you're going to educate your child. That is the only way. It is your responsibility as a parent to teach money management to your child early enough for you to see their weaknesses and manage them. Don't leave it to the employer.
We were also curious to find out if it was possible to identify someone who manages their finances well. Could it be as simple as looking at what somebody owns?
That's a bit of a tricky question because you cannot say it is a person who is not exposed to debt. Using loans to grow yourself is a smart way of managing your finances. But it's easier to actually say, how do you know when you are not managing your finances properly. Are you with me? Rather than to say, how do you identify a person who is good at it? Because the person who finds themselves having to access credit for items which they shouldn't. You know, we need a loan to buy a house. We need a loan to buy a car. But you don't need a loan to go shopping for clothes. But credit cards have been structured in such a way that I will use them to go and buy clothes and even groceries. So once you find yourself, I know most personal finance books will talk about the 20% rule or the 30% rule. They normally oscillate between 20 and 30%. But this is where they're basically saying, if you find that more than 20 or 30% of your income is actually going into paying debt, actually goes into paying loans, then you should know that you are getting into trouble. And if you've got a two-income family, then if both incomes are actually going into paying loans, then they are running into problems, right? So you need to set a limit on your, have a ratio to say how much of my income, a debt-to-income ratio, how much of my income will go to paying loans. And once you go above that figure, then you know you're running into trouble.
To end the first in our series of financial planning, we asked Edna to give us the last few words of advice on financial goal setting.
You see, the most important thing about setting your personal financial goals is, first of all, understand yourself. Understand yourself so that you can define your needs to meet you. Because in most cases, we find the mistakes we make in expenditure are really a result of not keeping in line with who I am and what it is I wish to achieve. So your goals will basically tell you what it is that is important to you as a person. If family is important to you, you will set up the nice house. You will make sure that the kids are comfortable, your husband is comfortable. Do you understand? If friends are important to you, you will set aside something in your entertainment budget to make sure that you can entertain your friends and keep them. So financial goal setting has a lot to do with understanding yourself and mapping out your needs and understanding the difference between your needs and your wants. Because it is understanding that difference which will allow you to set priorities and say, fine, this is a need which I cannot set aside. This want, I can actually push it down the priority line and address it later.
It's now time for our business tip of the week, brought to you by First National Bank. FNB brings you the Financial Literacy Program. This program is tailor-made for employers to help their employees better manage their finances. Sotwana Ngobe of FNB explains more.
It helps their employees to better understand their benefits, such that they can plan around their retirement packages. They can plan around the death benefits that may come as part of their packages. It also helps employers to support their recruitment and retention strategies. If I'm an employee and I know that the company I'm going to join is going to make an effort to try and avail financial management skills to me, it might be an incentive for me to join such a company. Running a financial literacy program can also help to reduce absenteeism of employees because of financial troubles. Because you find that a lot of people who have mounting debts, if they know that it's month end and the people they owe are going to come after them, they just don't show up at work. So availing a program such as this one, it will help them to manage their finances better. Running a financial literacy program in the workplace may also help employees to reduce stress related to the management of their finances, because then they won't be preoccupied with their mounting debts or their creditors.
We're now going to share with you business and finance news that made headlines this week. We hope that from tonight's episode, you have a better appreciation about the actual cost of road accidents in Botswana. And I hope we have a little bit more information about planning your financial future. So from myself, Shadi Lindsay, and my co-host, Namito Sibina, have yourself a good night.